Welcome to the MS Gym podcast, where we give you the tools to live life by design, not by diagnosis. I'm your host, Brooke Slick, and here we go. Hi, everyone. I am so excited about today's guest. I cannot even tell you. You see, a couple of weeks ago, I did an unassuming little micro episode on mobility devices. And there was no way I could have predicted the massive amount of positive feedback that we received on that episode. Let's just say it resonated. Given that, when the opportunity arose to have today's guest on the podcast, I was more than elated. She is an absolute superstar in the MS space. From her award-winning blog, Tripping on Air, that chronicles her life with MS, to her Instagram presence, to the recent WebMD documentary featuring her, ARDRA SHEPHARD is calling bullshit on how society views differently abled individuals. Her content is overflowing with upfront, often comedically deadpan observations about living with MS, and equally as important, living with mobility devices. You see, mobility devices and learning how to live with them with grace, confidence, and style for days is her jam. In today's episode, ARDRA shares with us how she threw her vanity to the wind and said, screw it. If there's nobody else out there representing what I want to accomplish with MS, and while using a mobility device, I'm going to be that person. And that's exactly what she's done. Everyone, please welcome ARDRA SHEPHARD. Okay, ARDRA, thank you so much for coming on today's episode. Our listeners are thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm going to jump right in. Recently, you were on the cover of the MS Society's Momentum magazine, as well as featured in a documentary short that was produced by WebMD. And, all of a sudden you're popping up everywhere, but you've been around for a while, especially in the social media game and more so in the blogging game. You were diagnosed in 2001. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you were 22 at the time.
Yes.
However, you didn't start your blog until 2015?
That's right. 4 years ago.
So what was the turning point for you where you were like, okay, I think it's time to start sharing what's going on in my life, and like, what was it?
I was very open about my diagnosis in the very beginning. I had no idea that it would change how other people viewed me. I was very naive. I was very young. I didn't realize that it would change how people would perceive me, would interact with me, how it would affect me professionally. And I mean, there was just so much going on, and it was very overwhelming time, but I was very open about everything. And then there came a point when I was on medication, things were under control. I became much more private about it because of all those things I just mentioned, the weirdness and the explaining and the judgment and all of that. And then it became important for me to kind of get public about it again when my MS started to be less of an invisible illness, and I started to have more obvious symptoms like drop foot, and I started to need mobility aids, and I felt like people were starting to whisper, and I felt like I needed to take control of the version of the story and tell it in my own words, if that makes sense.
Got it. Absolutely. That makes total sense. It's amazing the shift that takes place when the disability goes from invisible to visible. It's
totally.
Like all of a sudden everybody thinks you're 10 times worse than you were before when you really were just as bad, a year ago. It's just your foot wasn't dragging at the time.
It's kind of both. Either it can be both extremes. It's like people are feeling sorry for you. They stop inviting you to do things and participating, or you have to explain why you need a mobility aid, like especially right in the beginning. Like it's maybe not that obvious. Like some days you're using a cane and some days you're not. Like what's up with that? So
Right.
there's just a lot of things that you feel like you need to kind of clear up. And I feel like sometimes for me anyway, it was easier to put those things in writing.
Right.
And then to have those conversations over and over again. Not to say that I started writing it for, the people in my inner circle. I think, things start for one reason and then they evolve
Right.
into for other reasons. I mean, it's helped me sort through a lot of stuff for sure. And, back when I was diagnosed in the dark ages before social media,
Right.
I looked for the storytellers that looked like me, that sounded like me, that were experiencing things the way I was, and they were really hard to find. And so I strive to be that kind of voice that I was looking for back in the day. But I also am so grateful that we have access to so many other good storytellers now, and we can see ourselves starting to be represented in this. Like through social media is such a game changing, leveler of the playing field, if you will, that we have access
Absolutely.
to so many more stories.
Absolutely. And as much as there are more of those to choose from today, I can honestly say, just because I do think that you and I think a lot alike in terms of vanity and mobility aids and remaining active and traveling and doing all those things despite, our setbacks. You are still a unique voice in the space. Like, don't ever not give yourself credit for that. You really do have a unique voice. You're very blunt. You're not afraid to drop an F-bomb, and God, I love you for that. But you're kind of like the whole package, because you don't just talk about mobility devices, but I think it's a big part of how you are visibly. You have no problem putting absolutely gorgeous photos on your Instagram of you looking totally fly, and you just so happen to have a mobility device with you, like or a cane or whatever. Now,
it didn't start like that for me. Like, if you scroll to the bottom of my Instagram, I started Instagram to just sort of support my blog. Like, that was my main thing. But I was very, very nervous in the beginning to put any photos of my face, any photos of me with a mobility aid. Like, I really started out really tentatively, where I would be maybe in silhouette or a picture of me from behind. It was, and really, if you search a hashtag now, like babes with mobility aids, there are thousands of pictures, but like as recently as 2 years ago, there were none. So, we've already made such a dent in changing perceptions of, what it means to be young and to use a mobility aid, and to sort of see ourselves represented. We still have a long, long way to go, but it wasn't easy for me. I had to really sort of I looked for this example. And then when I just decided to be the example that I wasn't seeing, it was very intentional to sort of say, I mean, it's a process. It's a whole evolution.
Because even though you decided to be that person, that doesn't make it any easier to be that person, to be on display, so to speak.
I mean, I feel it's easy now, but I celebrate it now. It was like a fake it till you make it but really, I really would Google like cane style and how to make a rollator look cool. And there was nothing. And it is different now. You can see those people, and it sounds so obvious to say. And this comes from my place of privilege of being like a white woman, not really recognizing how important representation was to me until I stopped seeing myself represented, until I stopped seeing people that looked like me in like fashion and beauty or on TV or in media or anywhere, that weren't like sick and pitiable.
Yes.
And so that's why it's so important that, like somebody has to do this. Somebody has to say like, no, we're still here. We're still participating. We still have value. We're still like We still need access to the beauty industry. We're still like vibrant, lively people. And you can hardly blame the rest of the world for kind of not understanding that because they don't see examples of it.
Exactly. And I got to tell you, we appreciate it. We appreciate you representing those of us who are striving to be exactly what you're talking about. And you know how it is. It's a domino effect. When one person does it, somebody says, you know, if they can do it, I can do it. And so on and so on and so on. And the next thing you know, everybody's comfortable with getting out there, living life with a mobility aid, despite the mobility aid.
I mean, I had no idea that it was going to railroad that part of my identity when I first started to need one. It really, I feel like there's so many resources for people with MS, but there are not enough, there are no resources really, in terms of like, there's so much focus that's put on relapsing remitting MS and getting to a place of not having any symptoms and being symptom free and disease modifying drugs. But there are not enough resources that teach us how to live and be successful and to cope with what happens if we transition to secondary progressive or if we have primary progressive MS. Like there are not enough resources that equip us with what we need to navigate that journey successfully.
Right.
And even, I mean, I had to do all the research. Yeah, like, but also even like practically speaking, like which mobility aids to get and when you need them and when you should transition from a cane to like, there's nobody. I had to figure all of that out on my own. And I've heard from lots of other patients that the same has been true for them. I mean, I have a rollator that converts to a transport chair. I didn't know that existed until I'd done a lot of research and like what a genius invention that is. But
and yeah, on your and you've named that device, if I remember right. And what have you named that lovely device? Which we are going to link. You do have. You can tell us the name and the company that makes it.
Sure. And so it's funny because I'm like such a girly girl and I'm not into action movies, but I do remember watching the Transformers when I was a little kid. And it's just like a natural name, I feel like, for this particular device. I call it Optimus Prime because it transforms from a rollator to a transport chair. So, I mean, it's great for travel or long days if you want to walk for as much as you can, and then you need a push and it can convert to a transport chair. So that's made by a company called Rolls Motion, and it's a great device and it's cool. They come in cool colors. They don't look so medical,
awesome.
They look,
awesome. I've seen it and it's pretty sharp.
Yeah, it's a great tool. And, there was an adjustment there in the beginning to kind of get comfortable and embrace it. It helped a lot that my husband, we travel a lot, and he noticed the difference for our travels immediately. He was so much happier to push me and to be seen pushing me than to be, doing something on his own while I was crashed out in the hotel because I didn't have energy. It really, it was a game changer. Yeah. Yeah. And he didn't start seeing me differently, and that helped also.
Now, I know, and I think this was a turning point based on what I read. Can you tell me about the guy with the fedora?
That guy, yeah. I wish I'd talked to him, but maybe it's like, don't meet your heroes, or, you know what I mean? Like, it would have been weird. I was walking down my street and with a cane, and there was a guy walking who had just turned the corner walking towards me, and he had that I don't know if he had MS, but I like to think he did because he had the kind of drop foot, the kind of gait that I had. Yeah. He looked like he was my age, and I call him Fedora because he's wearing a fedora. And we just kind of gave each other this knowing nod, this look as we passed. And then, I thought about him for the whole rest of the day. I even walked the dog at the same time the next day, thinking maybe I'll run into him again. I want to talk to him, because that was a light bulb for me. I thought that guy looked cool, and he doesn't look diminished by that cane. Like, he's like, I don't think he's less than or weak or a sick person. He's like young. He looks like I love his outfit. He looks like somebody I could be friends with. And I was like, wow, maybe I can look like that too. Or maybe I do look like, maybe I was the same thing for him, and it's sort of not, it's not giving in to that internalized ableism that we all have. We can't help it. It's like what society, it's our experience of disability. It's what we know and believe it to be. And so it takes kind of a conscious effort to say, I reject that. Like, that's not who I am, world. And you can't tell me that that's who I am. And I'm going to tell you who I am. And this is who I am.
Right. I had an experience. I was recently in New York City, and I was standing at the elevator bank waiting for the elevator to come down. And of course, in New York, in hotels, people from all different countries. And this woman came up to me with a thick, I want to say it was some kind of Scandinavian accent. And I had both my trekking poles, and, I was dressed, I was put together, whatever I was wearing. And she comes up and she goes, she said, "Are those Nordic poles?" And I said, "Actually, they're just trekking poles." And she said, she asked me where I was going or what. She basically was asking me why I was using them, because it's not like you see a lot of people using them in New York. I said, "Well, actually, I have MS." And she goes, it completely switched right then. She goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I said, "Oh, no. I said, it's fine. And I think she thought for a minute, and she turned away, and then she turned back and she said, "Just so you know, you make them look very fashionable." He said that, and I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." It went from this moment of, oh God, to cool.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. And it just gives, the user of the device, the person with the disability, sometimes all it takes is this final or even a little nudge to be like, this is going to be okay. I think I can do this. And I'm not just going to do it. I'm going to rock it.
Yeah. But, it's still like, for every 10 times that somebody says something to you in public with your mobility aid, maybe one of them, they're going to comment on how badass and cool you look. And the rest of the time, you may leave that encounter feeling like that wasn't your experience. You know what I mean? And so that happened to me just recently. I was in an elevator, just having a good day, feeling fine, not thinking about anything. And somebody was very pitying to me and, "Oh, are you in pain? Does it hurt?" And those are the moments when I just have to remind myself, don't feel sorry for me. It's like, yeah, I can't control what you think about me. I'm trying to change the conversation and influence what people think in general about people with disability. But wow, we are so at the beginning of this conversation.
I agree with you completely. And I think so many people rail on people like that person in the elevator who said that to you. They think that they're being insensitive, when in fact I think they're being empathetic, and they, like you said, they're working from a place that has been programmed into their mind about what it's like to have a disability. So it's not really like, sometimes you have to give people a break. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be some asshole who's going to make some insensitive comment.
Yeah, you know what? It's not even about, I don't think that this person was an asshole. And I agree that it's just sort of how we've been conditioned to think. I think that the danger is that these, let's call them microaggressions, these tiny little comments that happen to be honest, most days if I'm out with a mobility aid, from strangers, they can make tiny little scars that add up to just making you feel like, to just remind you that the rest of the world sees you as different, sees you as something to feel sorry for. And it takes a real effort to remind yourself that just because other people see you that way, that's not how you have to see yourself.
Right. I agree with that completely. Your blog, I spent a lot of yesterday going through your entire blog. And not just because I was doing research, because I couldn't stop reading. It was so good. Like, that's how good it is. And
thank you.
There were so many points in it that I think will speak to so many of our listeners, and they definitely spoke to me. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look through here, and I'm going to refer to a particular blog post, which you guys who are listening, just so you know, it's all going to be linked in the episode notes. So everything ARDRA, everything she's working on, the documentary, there'll be links to everything in the episode notes. So no worries there. But in the beginning, this actually I'm going to talk about something you said at the beginning of the documentary, which I absolutely loved. And it's something so simple, but it's something when you're in the MS space or the disability space for a long time, you'll get it and you'll recognize this phrase. And I thought it was interesting, Audra's response to it. One of my favorite parts in the opening was you start off by saying, "My name is ARDRA SHEPHARD and I have MS, but MS doesn't have me." Then there's this pregnant pause. Then you say, "That's bullshit. MS totally has me." And I was like, yes, ARDRA, thank you for saying it. Because, it's that phrase that comes up a lot. It doesn't have me. Okay. And the other one that always gets me is, "My MS does not define me." Well, it doesn't define you, your soul, the person you were born as, your heart, but it does define the way you navigate through this life. And in the case of mobility devices, it defines how you get around. So, but like you said, it's bullshit. MS doesn't have you. It doesn't. MS isn't it's not a fair weather friend. It takes you and it's just with you. Sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better, but it always has you.
So, I think this is another thing that comes at the very beginning of this diagnosis is a lot of the advice that we get from people in uncomplicated bodies is to not let it define you, and so I think it's something that we, on some level, train ourselves to say or believe, because it helps other people. And maybe it's also helpful for some people. And I don't want to take that away from them. This is just like my own experience of it.
I'm not bashing people who say that.
No. I know you're not. It's just like, I feel like we don't always give ourselves permission to say, this sucks. Like MS, and you can be positive and you can keep moving forward and doing what's best for your body despite the circumstances you've been given. But I think it's very helpful and healthy to also be able to say, like, this is bullshit. Like, this is not an easy thing that I've been given, and it's hard, and it sucks, and I have to consider everything that I do through the lens of MS. So it has me.
It's like this sucks. It shouldn't suck this bad to try to put on a pair of earrings. It shouldn't suck this bad to try to put on shoes or put on a pair of pants. I shouldn't have to lean up against the wall to do it.
Yeah. Or like, am I gonna go out tomorrow morning? Well, that depends on my bowel routine. Let's be real. Like
the timing. I have to do this before I leave the house, and I'm going to this establishment that has a bathroom. In the back
downstairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all.
So MS has me. Like that's like the dictator that lives in my body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think even people who might be your best friend, they don't, at least in the beginning, they don't realize just how much calculation goes into,
Oh, yeah.
oh, let's go shopping this afternoon and to a movie and then we'll go to dinner afterward.
Yeah.
They say it, they do it, they don't think twice about it. Whereas we can do the same thing, but there are all these different components in between, all these different factors, things you have to factor in to make that a successful event for you and be able to have enough energy to do it all.
Yeah. And, I used to have a very mixed feeling early on when people close to me would say, I sometimes forget you have MS. And
right.
Yeah, like that used to be very intoxicating actually, because I didn't like, for someone who now feels like the poster girl for MS, I didn't want my name and MS uttered in the same sentence.
Right.
So that they're on some level that felt like a compliment. And I think that was how it was intended. But the flip side of that is that feeling of not being understood when you have this invisible illness and like people forget that you have it. That also means they forget how much you have to rally sometimes just to get out the door.
Exactly.
And participate.
Exactly. I know exactly what you mean. Sometime within, say, the last 6 months, I said something to my husband. It was something I was complaining about. And I said, you need to realize that that's really hard for me. And I don't know, it was something about he had left his shoes, something that he was repeatedly doing that I had to keep moving because I had to go around it, something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he said to me, and like you said, it was intoxicating because he said, because I said, I am disabled. That's what I said to him. And he's like, I don't think of you as disabled. Well, part of me was like, oh, thank you so much. And the other part of me was like, are you paying attention?
Yeah. Oh, it's so hard. And like the part of you that's delighted by that is the part that has been like conditioned to see disabled bodies as less than. Like that's just we have to fix that. And it feels like such a monumental task to just see disabled bodies as different instead of less than.
Enabled.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Because so much of how we're disabled is by our environment. Also, the bathroom downstairs or the shoes that are trying to kill you because they're in the way.
Yes, absolutely. I went to, when I was in New York, I went to see Marie Forleo. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but I went to an event that she had, and I'd gotten a VIP ticket, and part of the VIP ticket is you got to have a photo taken with her, which I thought, okay, cool. Well, we waited, and at the end, everybody's standing around, waiting to see where the pictures were going to be taken with her. And at the very last minute, they said, oh, it's going to be downstairs. And I'm thinking, oh, no big deal. Well, there was no elevator to downstairs, at least not from where we were sitting. So I had to go down this big long set of stairs that was filled with hundreds of people. And I thought, no big deal. I had my trekking poles and there was a railing, so no big deal. But then when I got downstairs, I'm thinking there'll definitely be an elevator down there to get back on the other side, blah, blah, blah. And there wasn't. And at first I'm like, I knew I could get back up this other set of stairs, and I did, and it wasn't a problem. But I kept thinking, what if I couldn't have done that? What would they have done? They would have had to carry me out of there. And not that I think that every event or people don't build typically, and especially not, 100 years ago, they didn't build buildings with disabled people in mind. I get it. But I think today there's really no excuse for not taking that into consideration.
Listen, and we talk about diversity and inclusion, disability is still way too often left out of the conversation. If we said to any other marginalized group, you can't use the bathroom here.
Yes.
People would be marching in the street.
Yes.
But for some reason, with disability, it's not incumbent on business owners to make their spaces welcome. It's the problem of the people with disability. And I think that, 50 years from now, when we look back at history and we look back at how we marginalized people with disabilities, I think it will be a point of great shame for us that it's taken so long to have equal access to people with disabilities. It's gross.
I agree with that.
It's hard not to be personally offended. And that's another part of the internalized ableism that we all take on, because when you are repeatedly, so I live in a big city, so I'm constantly finding myself in places and spaces where I am not welcome, and it's hard not to take that personally.
Right. Right.
Because like the space isn't designed for me. That's, you know, it's, and I know it's not personal, but it's hard not to feel like, you know what, your business here is not as valuable as somebody else's.
Exactly. Ardra, I want to ask you, because I'm curious myself, and I did go through your blog, and I still can't figure it out, so I'm just going to come out and ask.
Yeah.
Hashtag babes with mobility aid. Did you create that?
You know what? I thought that I did. I thought that I had, but I think it's pretty zeitgeisty, and someone else started the hashtag babe with a mobility aid right around the same time. So it's hard to say like who started it for sure. And I don't remember. I thought that I had, but
I'm just going to say you did.
Yeah. Okay. But you know what? It doesn't matter because it's so much bigger than me now. And I follow the hashtag and I see pictures that people are posting that are in no way connected to me or even to MS. And I just feel like so great about that, because even as, you know, as comfortable as I feel now, I still feel rallied by seeing so many other awesome women out there just owning it, and men too. Although they're less likely to assign themselves that hashtag. But I feel, and like anytime I get an email from somebody that tells me that I've helped them feel more comfortable using a mobility aid or like given them the courage, that is so humbling to me, and just, wow. That's like maybe the thing I'm the most proud of. It's, because awesome. I know how important it was for me to kind of feel that way. It's not trivial, you know, we all have a right to that. Yeah.
Acceptance. But sometimes once you get over that hump, it makes all the difference in the world. Now, there was a blog post. This was from July of 2018 of yours. And it was called How to Improve Mobility Aid Stigma with a hashtag being babes with mobility aid.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to read a little clip of it, and you tell me what you think. I think it's awesome. And it's about vanity. Part of it. It says, my mobility aid epiphany didn't happen overnight. There was no aha moment when I was suddenly okay with multiple sclerosis taking over my body and my ability to walk independently. The transition from relapsing remitting MS to secondary MS is hard. Even now, having reached some degree of acceptance, there are days when I have no chill about how badly I don't want to be someone who needs a mobility aid. You go on to say, though I eventually realized that using mobility aids didn't mean I was accepting some kind of personal failure, I still couldn't get past what needing them said about me. I didn't want people to see me, quote, like that. I shoved my devices out of photos. I decided I'd never use a cane in our apartment, believing that I was somehow tricking the banker, your husband, into thinking I remained relatively healthy. I was convinced that looking fall down drunk was still sexier than looking disabled. Yeah, I'm that vain. I loved that. That's even for our, family members, spouses, kids. You're still trying to play this physical role. You're essentially faking it and risking falling because of it, because of your vanity. So I thought that was just very telling of, just bringing the vanity part of it into it, that even after you were accepting, and even now, I'm accepting of what I have to deal with, that every once in a while there'll be a moment where I'm like, you really do feel like you're on display, or you're like,
oh my God.
are
Yeah.
they watching me?
Like try walking through a restaurant, like you feel
Yes.
all those eyes on you. Like I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. That's,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like I am smart and accomplished. I am like, I spent my life like cultivating the person that I am, and to feel so reduced when people just pity you when they have no idea what your life
Yes.
is a really gross feeling. And but of course that's like different in the house. That's the internalized ableism part of it too. I think there is something like we don't see ourselves move the way other people do, and then every now and then you'll catch it on camera or in a photo, and it can be startling. I still have regularly, I have dreams where I'm walking and
Yes.
and I'm strong and I'm like walking and walking.
Yes.
And then I wake up and I'm like devastated to think, oh my God, that was a dream. And it's just, it gets such a boring dream, but in the dream I'm walking and it's easy and I'm not using mobility aid, and
right.
sort of like not until I wake up that I realize like, oh yeah, that's not how it is.
Yep. I know. Here's another blog post. It was one where you were trying to make a decision about which mobility device you were going to buy. And you had two choices, mobility device A and B. And one was, I believe one was some like bright purple, clunky medical equipment looking thing. And
it had so many like cables on it, I remember.
Yes.
It's just, yeah.
Yes. And then choice B was your beautiful Optimus.
You know what? Part of it is like, we think of like what we spend on cars and transportation, and disability is expensive. There's no question. It is expensive as hell to have MS. And that's part of it too. There's like this guilt of using family resources to spend more money on like the more expensive mobility device than like the more economical one. That's like something to negotiate, like prioritizing that. There's also no roadmap of somebody saying like why this one is better, why you should maybe consider this one, and like putting a value to style and recognizing that, I mean, not only is the style better, but the function is also better. Right. I think like there are some companies that are starting to realize that people, that first of all, young people get disabilities, but even seniors still care about style and design and looking good. And so hopefully we're starting to see a shift in how this equipment is designed. I mean, we're an aging population already. Like we need to have better options, and they need to be at more affordable price points.
I mean, I'm 55 and I'm sorry, but not sorry. I care. I care about
of course you do. Yeah.
I care about how I feel while I'm using it. And no matter, well, I only use trekking poles, but like I could so envision what you're talking about when you say about walking to a restaurant, because, you know, you're close up with all these people. They're looking like they can see, like, you know, you see the people looking you up and down. And I'm telling you, not that I'm saying everybody has to be Susie Sunshine all the time, but something I use that really seems to quell what they might be thinking is I smile, because I'm usually happy. I smile and I'm standing up as tall as I can, and I think it kind of throws them off a little.
It's also really, it is exhausting to have to like even think about how your presence is making other people feel.
Yes.
And that is something that is kind of constant when you have some kind of visible disability. I remember being at a restaurant with my husband maybe about a year ago, and there were like 3 or 4 steps to the bathroom, and he was helping me up those steps, and it was right next to a table, and the whole table like stopped their conversation and was watching in slow motion me go up those stairs. And then somebody at the table looked at my husbend and said, "You're a good man." And
Oh,
I was like, that stuff stays with you for like, what
yes.
the does that mean? Like,
Oh,
you're a good man. Like,
oh,
just
oh,
so like, you're so wrong. Yeah, he's a good man, but you don't know that. Like, it's, oh,
right.
I don't even get me started.
No,
Yeah.
I completely understand. And now I'm going to, from that blog about buying ugly mobility aids, I'm just going to do a little quote, a little snippet from it. You said, it's hard needing a mobility aid, really hard. There's so much beyond my control that I must sacrifice because of MS, but there is no need for me to give up style. I accept that using a mobility device adds a certain je ne sais quoi to my image, but I do not accept that we can't do better than this. So how about designing a few more of these things with the cool kids in mind? Shallow or not, our stuff helps us establish our identities. And option A, which was the bright purple, was crushing my soul. And
Yeah.
I think what they did initially when they were trying to cater to people who wanted to be more cool with their mobility devices, is they took the same old walkers they always had and just had made them red or purple or like some royal blue or something.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, look at us! We're so trendy." When in fact it was the same damn device. It was just colored.
Yeah.
And it still had all the wires and the grips and the this and
Yeah.
there was nothing sleek about it. There was nothing. The good news is people like you and me and others who would use these kind of devices are looking to people like you and finding the confidence to say, you know what? You're right. I'm getting this. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to stay in the house anymore. I'm going to take my damn walker out, my rollator, whatever the hell you have. I'm getting out there.
I think that's something that you hear is people would rather stay home and not participate because they don't want to use mobility aids. And that's a tragedy, really. And yeah. And, a lot of that is stigma. A lot of it is also, I think I write about this somewhere in there also that, I didn't have doctors or medical professionals or any like guiding me through the transition to mobility aids. And also a lot of times we hear people there was a funeral of somebody that I knew and everyone was talking about how much this guy had resisted using a wheelchair, like until the end, like to his great detriment, but everyone was bragging about that. Like he was so strong and he didn't give up and he kept fighting. Right. And that's so toxic and unhealthy. Like I feel like there are a lot of people who would benefit from being encouraged to use mobility aid. Like I know it would have helped for me at some point for somebody to say like, I'm proud of you for using this rollator or cane or whatever, instead of like, don't give up, keep trying, like push yourself until you break something,
I know exactly where you got that from. And I'm going to tell you why. This is from How to Find the Most Badass Mobility Aid. It was from August of 18. And here's what you said. You said, while my friends and family were supportive, nobody was exactly championing mobility aids, even when my drunk walking started to get dangerous. I only had bad things to believe about canes, walkers, and wheelchairs, and was hell-bent on resisting them. The silence of those around me did nothing to hinder my hesitation, my interpretation of the unspoken subtext being that bringing home a mobility device would be akin to giving up. Which is bullshit, of course.
But there's nobody to tell you that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like there's no, and that's why I'm really proud of what's happening in social media, because you have to figure that out on your own. And that is so, who has the skills to do that? You know, it takes it's not easy. And no one else is in your body. I think of I remember being in the airport in Rome and not getting wheelchair assistance, and the lineup was like 2 hours, like wanting to die. Nobody could see that anything was wrong with me, and just wanting to lie on that floor. And
oh my God. So you ask for wheelchair assistance every time now?
Oh, now I do. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I'm so over it, but,
Yeah. Like, do you want to live or don't you want to live? Because I mean, that's the bottom line. It's like, how badly do you want to go out to the restaurant tonight? How bad?
But it's still, you still have to put up with bullshit. Like, I never get through airport security and wheelchair assistance without the security person asking my husband if I can walk through the metal detector. And
like, you don't
recently,
have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. And that is so offensive. And they see hundreds of people in wheelchairs a day. So it's standard for them to not address the person in the chair. And that's training. It's in every country. It's in every airport. Recently, I went to New York by myself and I thought, well, now they're going to have to ask me.
Yeah.
But I had wheelchair assistance, and sure enough, the security person asked the person, like the airport employee who was pushing me in the wheelchair, if I could get up and walk. Wow. Like, how would they know? Right? Like, so yeah, I get the assistance, and I definitely don't want to turn into the cranky, disabled lady.
Right.
But and people get the benefit of the doubt, but that's why I think this storytelling and this media representation is so important, because we need to start influencing how people see and think and interact with people who are in different bodies. Yeah. We need to change the conversation. I think it's an exciting moment in time, because we are hearing more and more diverse stories. I think we're like, as a society, we're like ready for it.
And social media is helping greatly with that. The fact that you can touch thousands.
We all have a platform now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And I think that's evolving as well. Lord knows there's going to be all kinds of other tools, other social media tools in the future. I want to know, because you did a blog post about it. And for me, it's kind of a twofold victory, is when Selma Blair came out about her MS. And then number two was so candid about using her cane, especially at the Vanity Fair event earlier this year. And it was like a watershed moment for so many people. When I say it was twofold for me, later in the year, she had HSCT in Chicago, and I had HSCT down in Russia. So just as much as people with MS were shouting from the mountaintops and saying, yes, 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 Selma, for using her cane and being out about that, she was also outing HSCT. So we were thrilled about that. But I want to know, because I know how I felt, how did you feel after you saw Selma Blair walk down the carpet at the Vanity Fair Oscar party, looking gorgeous with that cane? What was your first thought?
I was thrilled. I mean, that is exactly the kind of example that we need to see. And, there are for sure other people in the celebrity sphere with MS, athletes, actors, and we don't know.
Oh, I know some of them.
Yeah, but they don't feel safe coming out, right?
Yeah.
And I can't blame them. So yeah, I think it was really great. And it feels like it was a long time ago. Like, I would like to see more of that. It's not incumbent on her she's just one person and it's her story. And I think the Selma Blair story can be tough for some people who don't see themselves represented in her story. It's tough when we see so few stories about disability. We kind of put it all on one person to tell all the stories. You know what I'm saying?
It's a lot of pressure on her.
Yeah, of course. Like, she's just telling her own story. And I hope that we begin to see more, that the entertainment industry starts to make space for these stories and this kind of representation. I want her cane. Like, it was, the pink diamond in the handle, and it had her initials engraved in it. How awesome, right? And she's doing some work for accessible design also.
Yes, I saw that. Tommy, partnering with Tommy Hilfiger or something?
Yeah, which is, Tommy Hilfiger is a leader in accessible clothing too, which is another thing we need to see more of. I think it's exciting times. Like, things are starting to change. Things we didn't even know were needed
and
are being given voice.
We're so reachable so easily because of Instagram, because of Facebook.
Yeah.
It's not like the old days where you had to wait for a commercial to come out from the company that created a certain, or you didn't have to wait to see somebody on a talk show, or like, it's all right there every day. Anybody could scroll through your Instagram and find inspiration in a lot of your pictures, your posts, of course, this episode is about you, but that there are other influencers out there. Not that everybody likes the influencer title, but influencer isn't always a bad thing.
No, it's not. I mean, it's like, of course, you think of like makeup tutorials and like, it's what we have to call it. But it's,
right.
I think that for a long time, the only resources for patients were doctors and drug companies, maybe the MS Society. And I don't know about you, but when I was first diagnosed, the people I wanted to hear from were the other people who had MS, who were the same age as me, who were navigating the same life circumstances. So relationships, careers, those kinds of things. And so I sought out those people, but it was way harder to do than it is now. And I think that is a big missing piece of the information puzzle for patients with any chronic illness condition, is to learn from the experiences of their peers and to like share stories, feel heard, know you're not alone, learn about medications and treatments. I mean, I've learned so much through social media and other patient experiences that doctors are not aware of.
Exactly.
And I mean, of course, we need all of these components. We need to hear from pharmaceuticals. We need to hear from doctors. We need to hear from MS societies and research, but it is a legitimate need to connect with and hear from other people who are experiencing the same thing we are.
ARDRA, I think I read somewhere you're going to be a keynote speaker for the MS Society's On the Move event in Washington, D.C. in 2020.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
What's that all
about? So that is their annual fundraiser. It's in May. And I've never been to Washington, so I'm quite excited about that. Yeah. So I'll spend a couple of days sightseeing before I speak at this event. And I'm thrilled that they've asked me to come and speak. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to connect down there.
That's awesome. What else are you going to be working on in 2020?
So I've been blabbing. I know. Yeah. Oh, somebody was telling me I was at an event last night and they were saying how somebody had said the theme for 2020 is going to be clarity. And I don't know who we think like 2020 vision, but it's also, it's cool. It's, we think of all of this kind of woke culture that we are, and it sounds cheesy to say it out loud, but it's true, right? Like, we are learning so much about, the real and true diversity of who we are. And I think attitudes have changed so much in such a short time because of media's influence on how we talk about different marginalized groups. And I think disability is like next up to the plate. And I'm super excited to be part of that in any way. I am in development with a company here called Shaftesbury. They make film and television. We're developing a show whose main character will have MS. So it's a show about a character who happens to have MS, and it's like truth telling. It's going to be a show for everyone. It's loosely based on my blog.
Really?
And yeah, I'm really, really excited.
That is so exciting.
Yeah, I think, we haven't seen enough good storytelling about chronic illness or disability so far. And most of the time, the stories are not told by people like writers or actors or whoever who have that firsthand experience. So we really want to kind of continue to shift the conversation and show like a different reality of what it's like to have this MS life. And yeah, I'm really excited. Like we'll be in the writer's room starting in January, and you'll be hearing more about it soon.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Yes. I can't even imagine. They can pull so much goodness from your blog alone.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
ARDRA, I'm going to wrap up. Again, another quote from your blog, but I think it pretty much, this statement rolls into one, what you stand for. And I think it's important. And here's how it goes. You say, every day I make a choice to not only believe in this badass version of myself, but to declare it to the world and to champion others like me to believe in the best versions of themselves. I use #BabesWithMobilityAid because I realize that if I want to see those people who look like me, those who look better than me, I have to put myself out there too. I absolutely love that. I want to thank you for putting yourself out there with us today. I think the listeners are not going to be disappointed with what they heard from you today. I highly recommend that if you have not seen ARDRA's blog, trippingonair.com, or followed her on Instagram, you are missing out, absolutely missing out. All it takes is one picture or one statement from somebody who's been there, done that, and doing it well to motivate you to do the same. So, ARDRA, I can't even thank you enough.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
For more information on the MS Gym, check them out at themsgym.com on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. If you'd like to know what I've been up to lately, you can find me at brookslick.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of the MS Gym podcast.